She looked me right in the eye and told me my cooking was old-fashioned. Said the family wanted something more elevated this year. I smiled and nodded and said of course. What I did not say was that I had fed half this county from behind a diner counter for 25 years, and the local paper had just decided to remind everyone of that fact. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Patricia. I am 73 years old. I live alone in a yellow house in Clover Falls, Ohio. My kitchen is the best room. It has always been the best room. I have flour somewhere in my bloodstream. I am fairly certain of that. For 25 years, I ran Patty's Corner Diner on Main Street. Nothing grand. Checkered floors, red vinyl stools, a pie case that spun slowly by the door. But every single morning that place was full. Truckers pulled off the highway. Teachers came before first bell. The mayor ate lunch at the counter every Thursday without fail. They all came for the food. My food. Made from scratch every day before the sun was fully up. My pot roast was what people drove 40 minutes for. Cast iron, low and slow, carrots and celery and a quiet splash of red wine that I denied adding for 20 years. The Clover Falls Register wrote about it twice. Called it the most comforting thing in the county. I framed the second article and hung it in the back office. I was 62 when I finally sold the diner. Not because I had to. My knees had simply started casting votes against me, and I respected democracy. I sold to a good young couple, said my goodbyes to the regulars, and moved closer to my son Daniel and his wife Nicole. I thought it would be a sweet new chapter. More time with family. More Sunday dinners together. More of all of it. That was 4 years ago. Nicole is a good person. I want to say that clearly and mean it. She loves Daniel, she works hard, and she keeps a home that would make a magazine envious. But from almost the beginning, she looked at me with a particular sort of patience. The tolerant kind. The kind reserved for someone who means well but needs gentle management. The first Thanksgiving after I moved to Clover Falls, I brought my pot roast. I was up at 5 in the morning. I drove it across town in the Dutch oven wrapped in towels to stay warm. Nicole received it with a smile and moved it to the back of the table, behind a store-bought potato salad in a plastic container. Nobody said a word about it all evening. I told myself it was nothing. The second Thanksgiving, she suggested I bring something simple. I brought my apple butter rolls, which I had been making since 1987. She put them in the kitchen and said she would bring them out when the time was right. She never brought them out. I told myself it was still nothing. But something was accumulating in my chest like weather. Last October, she called me on a Tuesday morning. She had that particular bright voice she uses when she has already made a decision and wants you to feel good about it. Patricia, I have some exciting news. I've hired a professional caterer for Thanksgiving this year. It's going to be really special. You should just come and enjoy yourself. You deserve a break from all that cooking. I asked her, very gently, what that meant for the pot roast. She paused. The pause was the answer, really. We just want everything to feel elevated and consistent this year. The caterer has a wonderful full menu. Your cooking is lovely, Patricia, it really is, but it's a little old-fashioned. We're trying to do something a bit more refined. Old-fashioned. I sat with that word for a moment. I held the phone and breathed. Then I said, of course, dear. Whatever makes it special for you. And I hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long while after that. I thought about 25 years of mornings beginning before dawn. I thought about the mayor. I thought about the trucker named Walt who cried at my counter the morning his wife left him, and how I poured his coffee and sat with him for an hour and did not charge him for anything. I thought about the girl from Columbus who stopped in once on a road trip and wrote me a handwritten letter 3 weeks later to say it was the best meal she had eaten in her adult life. Old-fashioned. What arrived 3 days later was not something I arranged. But I could not have arranged it better. My friend Barbara Ketterer called. Barbara has written about food for the Register for 30 years. She had been at my kitchen table twice over the summer, eating my cooking, asking questions, scribbling in a little spiral notebook. I had assumed nothing would come of it, the way you assume most things will come of nothing. Patty, she said, the feature runs Wednesday. Full page, above the fold. I used your pot roast recipe. My editor called it a lost institution of Ohio home cooking. People are going to read this. I sat down slowly in my chair. Wednesday, I said. Wednesday, she said. I thanked her. I hung up. I did not move for about 10 minutes. I just sat and let the whole situation settle over me like something warm. Here is what I decided in those 10 minutes. I was not going to call Nicole. I was not going to show up at Thanksgiving with my Dutch oven under one arm and a newspaper under the other. I was not going to say a single pointed thing at that dinner table. I was going to show up. Smile. Eat the elevated food. Compliment the caterer. And let Wednesday speak for itself. Monday evening I called my neighbor Ruth and invited her and her husband Glenn for dinner the next night. I made the pot roast. We opened a bottle of red wine I did not deny had gone into the pot. We sat around my kitchen table until close to 10 o'clock. At some point Ruth put her fork down and said, "Patty, this should be against the law." I told her the butter was the criminal, not me. Wednesday morning I drove to the drugstore and bought 2 copies of the paper. I read the article once, standing at the counter in my coat. Then I folded 1 copy carefully and put it in my purse. Not to show anyone. Just because I wanted to carry it. Thanksgiving Day. I wore my good burgundy blouse. I brought a nice bottle of wine. Nicole answered the door with warmth and good organization. The house smelled like professional cooking. Precise and correct. The table had little cursive cards on each dish. Herb roasted turkey. Gratin dauphinoise. Butternut bisque. Haricots verts with almonds. My sister-in-law Carla found me in the kitchen almost before I had taken my coat off. She was barely containing herself. "Did you see the paper?" she whispered. "I did," I said. Patty. Above the fold. A lost institution. They quoted someone who drove in from Toledo. Nicole appeared in the doorway just then. She had a glass of wine and an expression I had not seen on her before. Somewhere between embarrassment and the effort to manage it. "Patricia," she said. "I saw the Register this morning." "Oh?" I said. "I didn't know you ran a diner." "For 25 years. I set my glass down on the counter. I kept my voice warm and even. "You never asked, honey." The kitchen got very quiet. Daniel was standing in the doorway behind her now, and he looked at me the way he used to when he was a boy and something large had just landed on him. "Mom," he said. "You never told me about the diner." "You used to sit on the counter and eat pie before preschool," I said. "You were 3 when I opened. You were 28 when I sold." He put his hand over his mouth. I watched it come back to him. Carla had her phone out now and was reading from the article. The most comforting thing in Clover Falls. A pot roast that has reduced grown men to silence. She looked up at the room. Patty. Grown men. A few soft laughs went around. The stiffness broke the way ice breaks in spring, quietly, and all at once. Nicole sat down at her own beautiful table. She looked at the caterer's perfect spread. Then she looked at me, and something honest moved across her face. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I didn't know who I was talking to. It was exactly the right thing. I was glad she found it. "The food looks beautiful," I said. "Let's enjoy it." We did. The caterer's food was good. Professional and consistent, which is a genuine skill. Everyone agreed. But before the evening was over, 3 different people at that table asked if I would make the pot roast for Christmas. I said I would think about it. The article made its way around that weekend, through channels I do not fully understand. Barbara called Friday morning to say people had been sharing it online, from Columbus, from Dayton, from places I had never heard of. Someone emailed the Register asking whether I gave private cooking lessons. A woman wrote in to say she had eaten at Patty's Corner in the summer of 1999, during the worst year of her life, and that she still thought about the pie. I read those messages with my reading glasses on and my coffee going cold beside me. I was crying a little. It was the good kind. Daniel came by Saturday morning alone. He sat at my kitchen table with his hands around a mug. "Mom," he said, "I should have been paying more attention. For 4 years, I let too much go." "You were standing between 2 women who both love you," I said. "That is not a comfortable place." "Still," he said. Still, I agreed. He asked if I would write out the pot roast recipe for him. Not for company. For himself. For the days when he needed something that tasted like being a little boy in a warm place. I wrote it on an index card in my best handwriting and passed it across the table. I am 73 years old. There is a framed newspaper article on my kitchen wall now, right where the winter light comes in good in the mornings. I did not need anyone's permission to know what I was worth. But it was deeply satisfying when the Register arrived right on time and said it plainly for me. The best things are low and slow. I learned that before most of the people at that Thanksgiving table were born. You do not rush the pot roast. And you do not rush the truth. Tell me in the comments, has someone ever underestimated something you poured your whole life into?